It was one of those perfect summer afternoons in suburbia, the kind where the sun hangs high and lazy in a cloudless sky, and the air smells like fresh-cut grass mixed with barbecue smoke from someone's grill down the street. I had just gotten home from a long week at the office, dealing with spreadsheets and endless meetings, and all I wanted was to unwind. My drone, a sleek little quadcopter I'd bought a few months back, was sitting on the kitchen counter, fully charged and ready to go. I'd been tinkering with it on weekends, capturing aerial shots of the neighborhood for fun, nothing fancy, just bird's-eye views of the park, the winding streets, and maybe a glimpse of my own backyard garden that I'd poured sweat into planting tomatoes and herbs. I grabbed a cold soda from the fridge, stepped out into the backyard, and fired up the controller. The drone whirred to life with that satisfying buzz, lifting off smoothly like a tiny helicopter. I guided it up about 50 feet, tilting the camera to catch the sunlight glinting off the pool I'd installed last year. It felt freeing, like escaping the ground-level grind for a bird's perspective. I maneuvered it around the edges of my property, careful not to stray too far. I knew the rules, or at least I thought I did. The FAA says recreational drones like mine have to stay under 400 feet, and I was well below that, just hovering over my own turf. But then, out of nowhere, I heard shouting. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" It was my neighbor, Karen. Yeah, her name's actually Karen, and she lives up to the stereotype. She was storming across her lawn, waving her arms like she was directing traffic in a hurricane. Her husband, Bob, trailed behind her, looking half embarrassed, half annoyed, with their yappy little dog barking at his heels. I lowered the drone back down and landed it gently on the grass, figuring this was just some misunderstanding. Karen planted herself at the fence line, her face flushed red under her sun hat. "That's a spy drone. You're spying on us, aren't you?" I saw it hovering right over our backyard. She pointed accusingly at my gadget, which now sat innocently on the ground. I tried to laugh it off. "Spying? Come on, Karen, it's just a hobby. I'm flying it over my own property. Look, the camera is pointed at my garden." But she wasn't having it. "Don't lie to me. I know what those things can do. You're probably recording everything: our pool parties, our kids playing." "This is an invasion of privacy," Bob chimed in, more calmly but still backing her up. "The HOA's got rules about this stuff. You can't just fly whatever you want around here." I felt my stomach twist. The Homeowners Association, that shadowy group of busybodies who dictated everything from fence heights to holiday decorations. I'd moved into this neighborhood 5 years ago because of the quiet streets and good schools, but the HOA had always been a thorn in my side. They'd find me once for leaving my trash bins out too long after pickup day. Now this. I shook my head, trying to stay cool. "Guys, relax. The drone's not over your property. And even if it was for a second, it's not like I'm peeping in windows. This is my backyard, my airspace." Karen snorted. "Airspace? What are you, some kind of lawyer now? We're reporting this to the board." And with that, they marched back inside, leaving me standing there, drone in hand, wondering how a relaxing afternoon had turned into World War III. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the scene in my head. Was I really in the wrong? I pulled out my laptop and started digging into the laws. Turns out, property rights aren't as straightforward as you'd think. Back in 1946, there was this Supreme Court case, United States versus Cosby, where some farmers sued the government because military planes were flying so low over their chicken farm that the birds freaked out and stopped laying eggs. The court ruled that landowners own the airspace above their property up to a reasonable height, something like 83 to 500 feet, depending on how you interpret it. Above that, it's public domain, controlled by the FAA. My drone? It never went above 100 feet, and it was strictly over my lot. So legally, I figured I was golden. But drones add a whole new layer. The FAA has strict rules for them, even for hobbyists like me. If your drone weighs more than 250 grams, mine does, it's about a pound, you have to register it online, which I did right after buying it. You can't fly over people without their okay, or near airports, and definitely not in restricted zones. But in your own backyard? As long as you're not endangering anyone or invading privacy, it's fair game. I wasn't flying over Karen's house. I was capturing my own space. Still, privacy is a hot-button issue these days. Drones with cameras can feel creepy, like Big Brother watching from the sky. I get that, but but I wasn't zooming in on anyone's sunbathing session. The next morning, the email came. From the HOA president, a retired accountant named Mr. Hargrove, who signed every message with "for the betterment of our community." It read, "Dear resident, we have received a complaint regarding unauthorized drone activity on your property. This constitutes a potential nuisance and violation of community standards under Section 4.2 of the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CC and RS. Please cease all such operations immediately or face fines up to $500 per incident. A hearing will be scheduled if noncompliance persists." My blood boiled. Nuisance? Unauthorized? This was my property. I paid the mortgage, the taxes, everything. The HOA might control the color of my mailbox or how tall my grass could grow, but the sky? That seemed like overreach. I fired back a polite but firm reply, citing the Cosby case and FAA regs, explaining that my flights were confined to my airspace and fully compliant. "I'm not spying on anyone," I wrote. "This is a hobby, like flying a kite or throwing a frisbee." No response. Instead, 2 days later, a certified letter arrived with a formal notice. "Hearing set for next Thursday at the community center. Bring any evidence you have." Word spread fast in the neighborhood. By Wednesday, I'd gotten texts from a few sympathetic folks, the young couple down the block, who had their own drone and thought the whole thing was ridiculous. But others sided with Karen. At the mailboxes, Mrs. Jenkins, the nosy widow from across the street, cornered me. "You know, dear, some of us value our privacy. What if that thing crashes into someone's window?" I bit my tongue. It hasn't, and it won't. It's safer than a kid's remote control car. The hearing was a circus. The community center was packed, about 30 residents crammed into folding chairs, sipping bad coffee from styrofoam cups. Mr. Hargrove sat at the front table with the board. Karen, of course, as the vice president. Bob, who looked like he'd rather be golfing, and a couple of others I barely knew. Hargrove banged a gavel. Yes, he actually had one, and called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the complaint against Mr. Thompson regarding drone usage." Karen stood up first, dramatic as ever. She had printed out photos, blurry shots from her phone of my drone in the air. "This man is using a high-tech spy device to invade our homes. I've researched it. These drones can zoom in from hundreds of feet away, record video, even listen in with microphones. Mine didn't have a mic, but facts weren't her strong suit." The crowd murmured. One guy in the back yelled, "Yeah, what about our kids' safety?" Another chimed in, "It's like having a peeping Tom in the sky." I felt my face heat up. This wasn't just about a drone anymore. It was turning into a witch hunt. When it was my turn, I stood and laid out my case. First off, let's talk facts. My drone flies only over my property, below 100 feet, well within my airspace rights as established by federal law. I passed around copies of the Cosby ruling summary I'd printed. The FAA regulates drones, and I'm fully registered and compliant. No flights over people, no restricted areas. This isn't spying, it's a hobby. If anything, the HOA is overstepping by trying to ban something legal on my own land. The room erupted. Karen shot back. "Your hobby makes us uncomfortable. The CC and RS say no nuisances, and this is a nuisance." Bob added, "We've had complaints from multiple residents. It's disrupting the peace." Disruptive? It was quieter than a lawnmower. I countered, "Uncomfortable isn't illegal. Where's the evidence of harm? Show me one video where I'm over your property." They couldn't, because there wasn't any. Things got heated. A neighbor named Steve, who I'd played poker with a few times, stood up in my defense. "Come on, folks, this is America. A man's backyard is his castle, including the air above it. If we let the HOA dictate every little thing, what's next? Banning binoculars? Telescopes?" That sparked more debate. Karen accused Steve of being in on it, whatever that meant. Hargrove tried to restore order, but the arguments flew back and forth like ping-pong balls. One lady worried about drones dropping packages' weight. Mine wasn't Amazon's. Another guy ranted about government surveillance, tying it to conspiracy theories. The high point, or low, depending on how you look at it, came when Karen pulled out her phone and played a video she'd found online of a drone crash landing into a pool party. "This could happen here," she shrieked. I rolled my eyes. That's not my drone, and it's irrelevant. But the damage was done. The crowd was split. half nodding along with her fear-mongering, half shaking their heads at the absurdity. After an hour of back and forth, Hargrove called for a vote. The board huddled, whispering furiously. Finally, he announced, the board finds the activity to be a potential nuisance. A $200 fine for the initial incident, and a ban on drone flights until we revise the rules. I was stunned. This is ridiculous. You can't override federal law. Hargrove just shrugged. Appeal if you want, but pay the fine within 30 days. I stormed out, fuming. This wasn't over. That night, I called a lawyer friend, Mike, who specialized in real estate. HOAs have power, but it's not unlimited, he said over the phone. They can enforce aesthetics and safety, but banning drones outright? That might not hold up if it conflicts with your property rights. He suggested I gather more evidence flight logs from my drone app showing exact paths all over my lot, and maybe rally support from other residents. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of tension. The neighborhood divided like a bad divorce. Some folks avoided me at the grocery store. Others slipped notes under my door saying, "Hang in there, Karen's crazy." I appealed the fine, submitting a formal letter with legal citations. Meanwhile, Karen escalated. She started a petition to protect our privacy from aerial intruders, going door to door with her clipboard. I heard she even called the local news, trying to spin it as a suburban spy scandal. One evening, as I was grilling burgers in the backyard sans drone, of course Bob wandered over to the fence. He looked sheepish. "Hey man, Karen's intense about this. But between you and me, I think she's overreacting. I used to fly model planes as a kid." I nodded, sensing an opening. "Then why back her up?" He sighed. "Marriage, you know? But yeah, maybe we can talk her down." That gave me hope. I started chatting with more neighbors, explaining the facts over backyard beers. Steve hosted a small gathering where we discussed HOA overreach in general, how they'd banned certain dog breeds last year, or forced someone to repaint their house a more neutral color. Momentum built. By the time the appeal hearing rolled around, I had a dozen supporters ready to speak. The second meeting was even more packed, standing room only. Local media had caught wind a reporter from the town paper sat in the back, scribbling notes. Hargrove looked nervous as I presented my evidence. GPS data proving the drone never left my property lines, FAA registration certificate, and statements from aviation experts I'd emailed, thanks to online forums. This isn't about safety or privacy, I argued. It's about control. If the HOA can ban drones, what's next? Kites? Balloons? Our freedoms are at stake. Karen fired back with her petition 15 signatures, mostly her cronies. The community has spoken. We don't want spies in our skies. But then my supporters stood. "Steve, this sets a dangerous precedent." The young couple, "We fly drones too, are we next?" Even Bob mumbled something about finding a middle ground. The reporter asked pointed questions. Does the HOA have jurisdiction over federal airspace? Hargrove squirmed. In the end, after heated deliberations that stretched past midnight, the board reversed. No fine, no ban, but with a caveat. Drones must stay over owners' properties and below 100 feet, and no filming neighbors without consent. It was a compromise, but a win. Karen stormed out, muttering about appealing to higher authorities. I felt vindicated, but exhausted. The battle had cost me sleep, friends, and a chunk of my sanity. Looking back, that drone flight opened my eyes to how fragile our personal spaces really are. In a world of tech and tight-knit communities, lines blur between freedom and fear. I still fly my drone now and then, but with more caution and a dash of defiance. It taught me to stand up for what's mine, even when the neighbors turn nasty. So what do you think? Should HOAs have the power to ban drones entirely, even if they're flown responsibly over private property? Is drone flying an invasion of privacy, or just harmless fun in a tech-savvy world? Do you side with the spies in the sky fear, or believe in backyard freedoms? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's debate this. If you enjoyed the story and want more real-life dramas like this, hit that like button, subscribe for updates, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Your engagement keeps these tales coming.